This is London in the 18th century, a vast city in constant motion, where new rooftops rise along the crowded Thames and life appears to have settled once more into a familiar rhythm. Yet reaching this moment came at a heavy cost. Before it could stand here, London had already endured a century defined by loss. In the 17th century, the city was torn apart by civil war, shadowed by plague, and then almost wiped away by the Great Fire of 1666. Flames consumed the medieval streets, leaving behind ash, ruin, and a profound question about London's future. And from those remnants, London entered the 18th century, not simply to survive, but to rebuild itself and rise in an entirely new way.
After everything it had endured, what did London become in this new age? Let us turn back the clock and discover it together.
Our first destination is the River Thames. This river flowed through London when the city was still a maze of narrow medieval streets, when the smoke of civil war darkened the sky, and when the Great Fire turned the heart of the city to ashes. The Thames saw London fall, and it also witnessed London rise again. By the 18th century, the river no longer carried only the memories of the past. It carried goods, people, and the ambitions of a city being reborn. Sailing ships crowded the water. Barges were loaded with cargo from across the empire, and the riverbanks were never truly quiet. This was not just a river, but London's main artery, the route through which all movement passed.
From here, London changed its rhythm. As the river grew more crowded, the city grew faster, stronger, and never looked back.
By the early 18th century, Old London Bridge was still there, linking the two banks of the Thames just as it had for centuries before. But in a London that was growing rapidly and expanding without pause, the bridge was beginning to fall out of step. Rows of houses and shops still clung tightly to its structure, turning the river crossing into a narrow, dark street, permanently overcrowded by the city's new pace of life. In the image above is Old London Bridge in the mid-18th century. Seen from a distance, it looks more like a neighborhood stranded in the middle of the river than a structure built for the future. London continued to rely on the bridge every day, yet the city was slowly coming to realize that it no longer suited the era that was unfolding. And then, in the following century, Old London Bridge was dismantled, making way for a new bridge that was wider and more modern. This was not merely the replacement of one structure with another, but a clear sign that London had begun to leave its medieval past behind and step fully into a different age. After the Great Fire of 1666, London did not only lose its homes, it lost the familiar shape of itself. As the 18th century began, the city stood before a clear choice: rebuild as it once was, or create an entirely new London. That decision appeared most clearly at St. Paul's Cathedral. In the image above stands St. Paul's Cathedral in the early 18th century. Its vast dome rises above the skyline, no longer built of wood or the fragile structures of the medieval past, but of stone, order, and permanence. Under the hand of Christopher Wren, the cathedral became London's quiet declaration after disaster, a statement that the city would not allow itself to collapse again. St. Paul's was more than a religious building. It became a new point of orientation for London, a place where people could look up and see a future already taking shape.
From that moment, London entered the 18th century stronger, steadier, and no longer haunted by its ashes.
18th century London did not try to forget what had happened. Among newly laid streets and freshly completed buildings, the city left behind a marker to remember the night of fire in 1666. Not to mourn, but to remember. In the image above is the monument to the Great Fire of London in the early 18th century. The stone column rises straight into the sky, placed near where the fire first began, a quiet reminder that London once collapsed right here. People passed by it every day. They did not stop for long, but neither could they ignore it. The presence of the monument shows that London chose a different way to move forward.
The city built its future by living with its past, and from that memory, it looked outward.
As central London gradually regained stability after disaster and turmoil, the city began to turn its gaze farther outward. To the southeast, Greenwich opened up as a calmer space, strikingly different from the crowded rhythm within the city. From here, London did not only see itself, it saw the path leading out to the ocean. In the image above is Greenwich looking toward London in the early 18th century. From the high slopes, the Thames curves toward the capital, carrying ships, cargo, and the strength of a nation expanding its reach. Along the riverbank stands the Royal Naval Hospital, with its balanced colonnades and domes, a complex designed by Christopher Wren and Nicholas Hawksmoor for sailors who had served across the world's oceans. Greenwich was more than a beautiful setting. It was a declaration that 18th century London was ready to move beyond the painful memories of the previous century. From here, the city turned its face toward the sea, and the world began to draw closer to London. When London had grown stable enough to look outward to the world, the city also began to look inward, at itself. In Leicester Square, the rhythm of life slowed, became more orderly, and took on a character entirely different from the noisy docks or the crowded commercial districts. This was where 18th century London reflected on who it was. In the image above is Leicester Square in the mid-18th century. Grand houses surrounded a central garden, frequented by the aristocracy and the upper classes. Yet what made this place distinctive was not power or wealth alone, but the ideas taking shape inside those rooms. William Hogarth observed London life with a sharp and satirical eye, while Joshua Reynolds shaped the image of the elite through formal, dignified portraits. Leicester Square reveals that London was not rebuilt by stone and commerce alone. The city was also rebuilt through thought, through art, and through the way it told its own story.
From here, 18th century London entered a more mature age, its identity clearer, though old shadows still lingered.
Although London had changed, some things never disappeared. The Tower of London still stood there, beside the River Thames, like a shadow stretching from the past into the present. In the 18th century, it was no longer the city's sole center of power, but it continued to remind London that order has always been bound to fear. In the image above is the Tower of London, seen from the River Thames in the 18th century. Its thick stone walls and Traitors' Gate still opened onto the water, where political prisoners were once brought inside by boat. Across generations, this fortress served as a royal palace, a prison, an armory, and the vault for the crown jewels. 18th century London may have been expanding, but the power of the monarchy never truly retreated. It merely changed its form, quietly present, as the Tower of London continued to watch the city grow around it. After civil war and catastrophe, London came to understand that power did not come only from armies or the crown. It came from trade. The Royal Exchange became the place where a new order was formed, not through commands, but through transactions. In the image above is the Royal Exchange in the 18th century. Inside its central courtyard, merchants gathered every day, voices in many languages echoing among the stone columns. This was the legacy of Thomas Gresham, and the place where the insurance activities of Lloyd's of London first began to take shape. London did not rule the world by the sword. It did so through contracts, insurance, and the belief that every risk could be calculated.
By the 18th century, the city's stability came from money, not violence.
Not in palaces and not in grand squares, London lived most clearly in Cheapside. This was where the city breathed, loud, crowded, and never silent. In the image above is Cheapside in the mid-18th century. Shops stand shoulder to shoulder. Buyers and sellers press along the wide street, where silk, jewelry, books, and spices changed hands every day. Above it all, the bells of St. Mary le Bow rang out, and the sound of the Bow bells defined what it meant to be a true Londoner. Cheapside reveals a simple truth. London did not grow solely through decisions made from above, but through millions of small transactions carried out each day.
It was the ordinary people here who kept the city moving, no matter what upheavals history threw in their path.
London entered the 18th century not as a perfect city, but as one that had learned how to stand firm. From the ashes of the 17th century, it rebuilt itself with stone, with order, with trade, and with its people. Old bridges were left behind, new structures rose in their place, and the Thames continued to flow through it all. London did not forget its past, but it also refused to let the past hold it back. That balance is what turned it into one of the most influential cities of the modern world. And if you would like to continue this journey back in time, to see how other cities survived and changed, leave a comment with the next destination and follow the channel so you don't miss these revived stories from history.
Thank you for watching and for joining me on this journey. And I'll see you again in 19th century London. Goodbye.